Hello, Gordon in the UK. Thanks very much for taking time to talk with us.
It's a real pleasure.
Well, we're going to be
a surprise.
We're going to be talking about the Deep Feeling CD. Since we haven't had you on the show before, we'll just ask you a little bit about yourself. So, Gordon, whereabouts are you from?
The same town as Polly. We were all from Worcester, which is middle of England, 26 miles south of Birmingham.
Well, what got you interested in music in the first place, Gordon? Was it as a young lad?
What got me interested? Well, you know, I went to the Albert Hall a few years back to see Nancy Griffith play, and she had one or two of the crickets with her, Buddy Holly's crickets. And I met what's his name? Sonny Curtis. And I said to him, your guitar intro for That'll Be the Day was the thing that kicked me off into the music. As soon as I heard That'll Be the Day, I thought, I need to do that. I was 13 at the time. Together with Elvis, of course, whose pictures were posted all over my bedroom at the age of 13, 14, and everybody wanted to be like Elvis, and I think that was the kickstart for all of us, really. Elvis and Little Richard and all those guys that, Jerry Lee Lewis, you know. That was the inspiration to do. We just wanted to do it like them.
Did you go out and buy a guitar? What did you do, Gordon?
Actually, to start with, that wasn't easy to do. You know, kids didn't have the money to do it in those days, and I wasn't from a rich family by any means. My father used to have a party piece playing mandolin, doing Camptown races and things like that, spirituals, you know. And he taught me to play 3 chords on the mandolin, and that's how I started, with my mandolin and 3 chords. I had a skiffle group with T-chest bass. A couple of guys had guitars, and I had my mandolin, and we used to do sort of Viper's skiffle group and Lonnie Donegan, all that sort of thing, you know, Rock Island Line, that sort of thing.
Was this while you're still in school?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't leave school till I was just about 17. I went through school with rock and roll in my head, and therefore I sort of failed school. Not completely, but it certainly didn't get my full attention. Rock and roll was the only thing on my mind, really. Still is, to a huge extent.
Well, that's good. What did you do to forward your career, and did you think of it
Never thought of it as a career.
No.
We all thought, of course the Beatles came along and showed us that you can do it. At that time, I'd been through a few bands, but I'd met up locally. I was in a little band, there were 3 of us, and there was only a guitar, a bass, and myself singing. And we decided that we needed to expand, obviously. And one of the guys came home and said, "Oh, I've met this great guy. He's a good drummer. Shall I bring him up for practice?" And so along came Jim Capaldi, who was at the time working in a factory in Worcester. He was a pattern maker, which means he used to build wooden models of the machines they used to make, you know. And along came Jim Capaldi, who sat in immediately. It was a boost to the band, and within a week, I think Jim had said, "Oh, guys, look, I've got this guitar player," and the next practice he turned up with Dave Mason. So it started off actually what was the Hellions. We very quickly imported a bass player, and the bass player we had wasn't up to it. So we very quickly got another bass player from a local group, which was Dave Meredith.
Where did the name come from, Gordon? Do you remember?
The Hellions.
Yes, where?
Well, Jim always being the creative force in the band, went to see a John Wayne movie called The Hellions, and that was it. He decided that would be our name.
Did you start getting professional work?
We started working quite a lot. I think people decided that we were a really good Beatles cover band at the time, you know, because we had the 3-part harmonies, and Dave Mason was particularly good at copying Beatles guitar, and Jim, we all fitted the bill. We dressed in Beatles suits, and we went out. We didn't only do Beatles, but that was the main attraction, if you like. And we hadn't thought about, I guess in the back of our minds we all thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could make it and go professional? But I was working at the time in a travel agency in a place called Malvern, which is near to Worcester. And one day the Jim and Dave turned up outside. It had a big plate glass window in this travel office, and who should turn up outside in an old car but Jim and Dave. And they walked into the office and they said, "We've got ourselves 5 weeks in Germany. Are you coming?" And from that moment on, I literally closed my desk and walked out, and never ever went back to a proper job.
Well done.
So we went to Germany and did that, and from that moment we were professional and had to make a living at it, you know. So.
Plus, also being a Beatles cover band, you actually followed the Beatles because they went to Hamburg.
That's right.
And
That's right. We went to the top 10 and the Star Club.
Yeah.
And all. We just followed in the Beatles' footprints, really.
How was the experience?
But we didn't only do Beatles things. We used to do some quite out and out things, really. We used to do things like the Shangri-Las walking in the sand, something like that. The Shangri-Las, I remember that. We used to do all sorts of odd things like Hurt, Timmy Euro, and Jim was always coming back with these odd songs. You know, later on he came back with Oh How We Danced, and I think he covered it on one of his solo albums
okay.
A little while later.
When did you start writing? When did Jim start writing? When did you start writing? Or was that...
Well, I think, when we were the Hellions, we got ourselves a recording contract with Pi, and they provided the A-side of we did 4 singles with Pi. They always chose, you know, we had what was called an A&R man, who was John Schroeder, actually. He produced other things. He decided what we would record, so we were told what to do, more or less. But the B-sides, they said, well, come on, lads, write yourself some songs. So to start with, I was the only one writing, and I think I did 3 of the singles were my songs, and Jim and Dave put their heads together and came up with a song called Shades of Blue, which actually is still very, very good. I wanted to put it on the Deep Feeling album, but Polly thought that perhaps, you know, as it wasn't Deep Feeling but Hellions, and that we might get some sort of a feedback from Pi, although they're extinct now, I think. So we didn't put it on, but I would have liked to.
Is there Hellions recordings in the vault there, Gordon?
Yeah, I've got copies of them. You know what happens when these things fold up? You get all sorts of stories, you know, where these guys come along and they buy up all the tapes and hope that one day something will happen. And if you look on the internet to some of the songs, you find all sorts of obscure record labels claiming to have them, and I've never ever had contact from any of them. And I think 1 or 2 have turned up on odd compilation albums. There's one called Daydreaming of You, which was written by Kim Fowley. Have you ever heard of Kim Fowley?
Yes, he's a bit of a legend.
He's an exceptionally weird guy, but very nice guy too. And he turned up at the record label, actually, and he, no, it was our management at the time. He turned up, because I was the Hellions were in the same management as the Rockin' Berries, the Walker Brothers, PJ Proby, there were others, I can't remember, but so this guy, Kim Fowley, turned up with a pile of singles from America for people to cover, and the Rockin' Berries covered He's in Town and got a hit out of it. Several other people got sort of something out of it, and we recorded a track written by Jackie DeShannon, which was called Daydreaming of You. And that is on the Kim Fowley compilation album. Recorded of all the things that he's done, you know, like Bee Bumble and the Stingers. Yeah. It's on that anyway.
And that's your Hellions version.
That's the Hellions. There's also an album out called Brumbeat, which has got a couple of B-sides of ours on. called Brumbeat anyway. I've got it myself.
Okay.
But you have to look for it on the internet.
Oh, it's good that these things are slowly coming out.
You know, it never means a great deal, but it's a sense of accomplishment that at the end at least something happened with it, because most of these things just faded into obscurity, really.
Well, there's people like us who come looking for it.
Well, fortunately, yeah, because, I mean, that's what happened with Soundlink Music. Sunbeam Records, they came along and wanted to re-release my single album, which they did a couple of years back. Sold a few thousand, and it's made me feel like something at least happened to it, you know.
Well, there's not many people who've got a chance to record an album.
No,
Back in the 60s. Speaking of Sunbeam, they've done a really fine job with the deep feeling. They've called it Pretty Colours.
I think they have, yeah.
It sounds good. Polly said he tweaked it up a little bit, but
He did.
that doesn't matter because it sounds really good. I was playing it in the car on the way here to the studio. It sounded really punchy. The songs are great, I've got to tell you. You and Polly and old Jim did a fantastic job writing the songs too. And
we'd only just started, really, you know. It was in its infancy. The recordings made by Giorgio Gamelski, you know, it was at the end of a session, I'd take home a rough mix because I had a tape recorder to play it on, and fortunately it kept the tapes, because it's a shame we couldn't have got I think originally it was recorded on either I think it was a 4-track actually, you know, and they just double-track things, and it was never ever mixed. What I have is just straight off the desk and was never finished, you know.
Well, it sounds finished on the CD.
Yeah, that's what I said, but we played it more or less live.
Right.
The only thing we overdubbed would probably have been the vocals. We'd certainly would have played it live.
You had a bit of a following. Polly was telling me you played, you know, all the big clubs in London and Birmingham.
We were doing really well. I mean, we were an up-and-coming band, and had Jim not left the band, I think probably we would have had some success, you know. We were ready for it.
Undoubtedly.
We were getting residencies at Scottish St. James and various clubs in Birmingham. We did have a following.
Just going back to the Hellions, I read on the liner notes that you also provided backup for singers.
We did a couple of things with PJ Proby.
Okay, did he split his pants?
We were playing down in a basement club in London, and they said he was on the same management as us, and he came one night, and in our repertoire we used to do Hold Me. Together, 2 of his songs, and he heard us playing them, and he came up and said, "Guys, you know, you sing them and you play them, would you like to come and back me, you know, on a..." Actually, it was a bit of a farce, because the guy had got to that stage where he was ripping trousers on stage and all the girls were screaming, and we very rarely got past the second number, you know, because they had to close the curtains. The whole place was in pandemonium. So we didn't actually, it wasn't actually it was a bit of fun, but it wasn't actually playing, if you know what I mean.
More a theatre piece than a musical piece, would that be right, Gordon?
And then he got banned for this, that and the other, you know. He was a bit outrageous.
From the CD liner notes, you know, you had people behind you. Well, you had Giorgio Gamelski, of course, producing it, and you had Viv Prince from the Pretty Things doing your publicity. So,
yeah.
Did he do a good job?
Well, I think Viv at the time, although he didn't admit to it, I think he'd been asked to leave the Pretty Things. He certainly wasn't playing with them at the time. He introduced us to lots of people, actually, and he was very useful, and I liked him, and I don't know ever what happened to him, whether he's still alive or not.
I don't know myself.
No, I never heard anything more of him. He was sort of mates with Jeff Harris, and he sort of knew the scene quite well, and got us these various things. He took us to a club called Knuckles, and got McCartney down and a few people to hear. And that's the night we played with Hendrix.
Polly was telling us, tell us your version there, Gordon.
Well, I mean, we were happily playing along, thinking, oh dear, we've hit the big time. Paul McCartney's in the audience, you know, this is it. So we were all up for doing the best we could, and then Viv came up. He said, look, there's this guy here. He's just come in from America. He plays good guitar. Do you think he could get up and have a jam? And we were all a bit upset about it, really, because we wanted to put on our best face, you know. Oh, not really, you know. This isn't quite the time for people to get up and jam with us. He said, no, I think this one you ought really to think about. So all right, you know. And, yeah, it was quite, from that moment on, the minute he picked up the guitar, you could tell something was happening, you know. I've just got a vision of him about 3 feet away from me to my right on stage, looking across, and he's picking the strings with his teeth and doing things, you know, all the stuff that you've seen him do.
What he was famous for.
Seemed to be happening on the stage, and in fact, after playing one song, I think Polly and Jim and Dave Meredith stayed on stage with him. That's drums, bass. No, I don't know what Polly was. Anyway, I left stage, I know, and Luther left stage. Just sat and then just stood and watched him. Let him have his go. I can't remember what it was he played, but it was certainly. And that was the night he arrived in London, so I'm sure we have the claim to be in the first band that he played with.
There you go.
Chas Chandler literally had walked in the club that night, you know, from landing at London Airport, so I can't imagine anybody else got in there first. But lots of people claim that they were the first, but we were really the ones.
I'll believe you on that one, Gord.
Well, Jim also states it on some of his interviews. He's always saying, yay, come on, we were the ones. We became good friends with Jimmy afterwards, you know. Had some funny times with him.
Just to get back to the Hellions now, who came up with the name change? Was it Jim Capaldi again?
Jim again, yeah, Deep Feeling.
Deep Feeling, where did that come from? Do you know, Gordon?
He used to come up with all sorts of ideas.
It wasn't another John Wayne film title?
No, it wasn't. I don't know where he got that one from. We did go through all sorts of stuff like the Emotions, and it was on that track, you know. It was sort of on that track.
When did you start writing songs? Was it before the Hellions, during the Hellions, or when Deep Feeling started?
It was during the Hellions, yeah. I started writing. In fact, the first song I ever wrote was called Words of Love, and somebody took a copy of it away, and the next thing I know, I mean, I've never ever been able to track it down, but I was told that it got to number 8 in Finland at the time with a guy called George E. Washington, but I think he put his name to it as songwriter, and I never ever heard anything about that. I could never find anything out. So that could be true.
I can't say I've heard of George E. Washington myself.
George E. Washington was something to do with the Applejacks. It was just a pseudonym that he'd used, you know. What his real name was, I don't know. I've just made vague inquiries. I'm not really worried about it, you know.
And so how long did Deep Feeling actually last, Gordon?
It would have been about, Deep Feeling and Hellions were probably getting on for 5 years, but Deep Feeling itself probably, you know, half of that, 2.5 years, something like that.
Of course, the band broke up when Jim Capaldi left, and Polly has vague reminiscences of it. Do you remember the day and how it came to be?
Yeah, well, you know, we used to jam at the Elbow Room Club in Birmingham, and after playing within a 50-mile radius, I suppose, the bands used to come. It was a late-night club, rather. The bands used to come down to relax and get together, you know, and some of which were Spencer Davis and of course Steve. And Steve used to turn up with Chris Wood and this guy called Mickey Twitch. Michael Jones was his proper name, but they called him Twitch because his head was shaking all the time. I guess he had some form of, I don't know what you call it.
Tourette syndrome.
Made his head shake anyway. Yeah. But not only did his head shake, but his eyes moved from side to side at the same time. So he was an amazing guy. And he had an incredible taste for music, as did Don Carlos, the guy that ran the club. So between them, they introduced us to, you know, that really was a good change of direction for us, because we got introduced to, and people like Jimmy Witherspoon got up and played with us, and Steve, of course, and various other people. Dave Pegg, who was in a band called the Uglies, I think he played guitar, actually. Dave Pegg from Fairport Convention. He used to get up and play with us. Annie Ross got up and played with us, and Cleo Lane. All sorts of people got up and jammed with us, you see. And Steve, of course, more regular than others. And you could see it happening. Chris Wood, Dave Mason had left Deep Feeling at the time. Well, he never was in Deep Feeling. When Dave left, we changed the name.
Right.
And Luther came in on guitar, and that was Deep Feeling. I think we decided we needed a fresh name and a fresh start, because the direction was definitely about to change, to the point where we did all our own things on stage. Well, mostly our own things, but certainly very selective copies of other things. Spell on You we used to do. Yeah, we used to do lots of stuff. We used to do a song called The Snake by Oscar Brown Jr., which is, Oscar Brown Jr. is an amazing sort of jazz rapper, I suppose you'd say, for his day. It was sort of almost talking, and very funny stories. So we did a song called The Snake. We used to do on the edge of jazzy things, Coming Home. With Polly on flute and vibes, we certainly took a jazz direction.
Direction that Traffic eventually went into too, isn't it? Just getting back to my question, so do you remember the day when Jim left?
When Jim left? Well, he'd been talking about it, and he was upfront about it. But I think we all sort of head in the sand thought, well, because we're doing so well, it'll never happen, because we were sort of progressing from day to day, and at the same time, Jim's still saying, well, we're still talking about this other band with Steve, and we went to France to do a 5-week, or 5 or 6 week, I forget what it was, but we did a summer season in this place on the west coast of France, and it was while we were there, actually, as Jim said, look, guys, this is it. After this, it's gone. So that was it, really. Yeah, the one in France was the end of it.
And so what did you do next, Gordon?
Well, we decided that without Jim, we wouldn't go on, because he was very much our front man. There was, we could all do backing vocals, and we couldn't actually continue in the way that we were, as we were. So we decided to split. Luther went on to join Spooky Tooth, and then Mott the Hoople and various other people afterwards. Dave Meredith went back home and became an insurance salesman and just gave up. Polly and I spent 12 or 18 months. Giorgio said that he would put us on a retainer to write songs. So we did that, and we wrote quite a lot of songs together.
What happened to them, Gordon?
1 or 2 of them are on that Deep Feeling. The ones that we could actually find that we'd recorded. We actually wrote lots of stuff, but it didn't come out. Giorgio sort of saw us as, do you know, ever heard of people called Flanders and Swan?
No, I haven't.
Flanders and Swan. They sort of dressed up in dinner jackets, and the one guy sat at the piano and the other guy stood there and sung. And they used to do sort of, it was almost musical stuff, They were quite big at the time here in the general entertainment business. But we wrote funny songs. Some of them, anyway. Some of them weren't funny, but we wrote a song called The Tightrope Walker, about a tightrope walker that fell off. Crazy lines about at the end of the song, but keep on with the digging, as if he sunk into the ground about 6 foot when he fell off. We wrote quite a lot of things, all of which didn't seem to go anywhere.
And after that, of course...
Polly decided... Yeah. Polly had a chance to join, I think it was the Eclection... Blossom Toes. Yep, he went to Blossom Toes. Giorgio offered me an album, to do a solo album. I was with a guy called Robbie Blunt at the time, who went on to record Big Log with Robert Plant. Remember Big Log?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that was, Robbie Blunt and I, we worked together on my solo album. I wrote the songs and he worked out the arrangements, and he plays electric sitar and all sorts of things on my solo album.
We'll have to do another show there, Gordon, on your solo album.
On the solo album?
Yeah, we'll have to talk to Sunbeam, Jude there, and he can fix that up for us. But I've got here, Gordon, that after the solo album, you went to work for Stevie Winwood in a non-musical capacity. Is that right?
Not directly. I think what happened is Giorgio's Marmalade label folded, and with it folded the retainer, which was keeping us alive, paying the rent and putting the food on the table. And suddenly, overnight, it stopped, and you just got to have an income. So I went off and got a job, which I'm quite happy to do. In fact, what I did, I went painting churches. That's decorating the inside of churches up the top of a 50-foot scaffold. That's a bit of an eye-opener, but I did that for about 12, 14 months. And at the time, I was visiting Jim quite often. I did some work for Jim, restoring some some windows, some stone mullion windows and stuff. And while I was there, Steve visited often and one day offered me a job, said, "You want to come?" So I did. Stayed there for in the region of 24 years as sort of gardener, housekeeper, dog walker, just generally looking after the place with him being away so often, you know.
And what's old Steve up to these days?
What's he up to? Well, he was on GMTV this morning.
What's that, Gordon? GMTV?
It's just a morning, a morning chat show on
Okay.
the Good Morning Television, I think it's called. Or something. Anyway, he was on TV this morning on a breakfast show. He's just came back the weekend after touring with Eric Clapton, finishing off in Istanbul on Saturday night. And this week he's preparing to go to America. He's doing a tour with Santana.
He's still a busy boy.
He's still a very busy boy.
Oh.
He's got a box set coming out at the moment, and
Okay.
there's a documentary on English TV on Friday at 9 o'clock on channel BBC 4. You can probably get it on the internet.
Maybe.
It's on at 9 o'clock our time.
And it's about Steve's musical career?
It's a BBC documentary about his musical career.
Okay.
They interview me on it, and I've got one or two photos from the cottage days, which they're using, I think.
And before we go, Gordon, tell us about your 50th birthday party.
That was a bit of a surprise. Yeah, I was reunited with Polly there.
Polly was telling me.
Well, my daughter, it was a surprise party which my daughter had arranged, and had quite a nice band, actually. With Steve playing Hammond, Jim playing drums. We had Polly playing flute and vibes, or I think flute, certainly vibes. And a guy called Jess Roden, have you heard of Jess
Yes,
Roden?
he played in the Butts band, I know that.
Yeah, and Jess is one of those unbelievable facts, probably one of the best singers that we've ever produced, but never ever had a hit record. He was with the Alan Bound set, and they used to play it over 300 days a year. They were, the hardest working band in show business. Yeah, Jess is just a wonderful voice. We had lots of other people there. I'd have to dredge back to find who they were.
So it was a bit of an all-star band there.
It was, yeah. It was.
Obviously you've recovered since.
Yeah. I've recovered.
Oh, good.
And I've
good.
had a 60th since then. And
Congratulations.
still playing on August the 3rd. Polly is still playing okay, we play 2 or 3 times a year, and on August the 3rd we're putting a band together and playing at a cricket festival or something in Cheltenham. So
Excellent.
we're still at it.
Oh, good on you, Gordon.
And Polly is just as good, if not better than ever. He's
Yes, he tells us
he's
himself.
such a reliable musician, Polly. His head is in music, and he knows his stuff.
Well, all right, Gordon, on that note, it's great to talk with you, and it's great to hear your music on the Deep Feeling CD. Sunbeam have done a fabulous job,
Yeah.
but it's great that this stuff is out there, and hopefully more stuff, the Hellions, etc.
It all came off cassette tapes and 1 or 2 tracks,
Remarkable.
that have been kept for over 40 years and survived a flood. So how it survived, I don't know.
Providence. All right, Gordon, it's a pleasure to talk to
Okay,
you. And
good to speak to
Yep.
you.